Now, Indian Americans have long leaned Democrat and still continue to do, but that bond is not as strong as it used to be, with many more leaning Republican in election 2024. Now, that's according to a recent poll by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Here's a closer look at the Indian American vote and why it matters in deciding who wins the White House.
The United States is often called a nation of immigrants because it has the largest immigrant population in the world. Out of all immigrant groups in the country, Indian Americans are now the second largest, making them an important part of the presidential election process. The community has mostly favored the Democratic Party. According to a survey released by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in YouGov, 61% of registered Indian American voters plan to vote for Kamala Harris, and 31% intend to cast a ballot for Trump. Indian Americans have emerged as an important political actor thanks to the community's rapid demographic growth, the close margins in modern presidential elections, and the diaspora's remarkable professional success, according to the survey. So how can Indian Americans impact the US elections? Out of the more than 5 million Indian Americans present in the country, over 2.5 million are eligible to vote. It is the most politically active group among Asian Americans. To put it into perspective, Joe Biden defeated Trump by a margin of just over 12,000 votes in Georgia in 2020, making each vote valuable. Though Indian diaspora comprises a small share of overall electorate, both the parties have actively wooed Indian American voters. In a campaign advertisement, Harris explicitly invoked her mother as a brilliant brown woman with an accent. The Republican campaign has also turned the spotlight on the community due to the Indian roots of Usha Vance, the wife of Trump's running mate J.D. Vance. Indian Americans have been thrust into the limelight owing to the possibility that for the first time in the US's history, a candidate of Indian heritage could have the top job in the nation. The latest poll also shows a modest drift towards Trump and Republicans. The poll says the drift is driven by Indian American men, particularly younger men born in the US. A survey done earlier has said that the number of Indians who identify as Democrats slipped from 54% in 2020 to 47%. In the same time frame, those who identify as Republicans rose from 16% to 21%, further solidifying the notion that both parties look at this community with hope. Vishal Vivek for NDTV World.
Let's dwell deeper into that conversation about Indian Americans. We are joined by Ajay Bhattacharya. He is the Deputy National Finance Chair with the Democratic Party. Also with us is Rick Mehta, former Republican nominee for U.S. Senate in New Jersey. Let's come to you first now, Ajay. According to that Carnegie Endowment survey, 6 in 10 Indian Americans registered voters intend to vote for Harris. However, a greater share of respondents now willing to vote for Trump since the last election, especially amongst Indian American men. Why do you think that's the case? What's moved?
Let's look at the other way, that 61% or more or 70% are voting for Kamala Harris, and they're excited about Harris' candidacy. And there's a small percentage of who are voting for Trump. But, Harris, as you said in your play, that her mother was from India, and the enthusiasm in the battleground states is very high. Indian Americans are looking forward to elect someone who they relate to, who has origin from India. And on the matters of issues, when Trump was the president, he basically, for the immigration, he had issues with H1 for EADs, where he made difficult for folks to get H1 and an employment authorization card, and so many other issues. Yeah. So looking at, Kamala Harris, on the other hand, has a personal connection with
Rick, rather, Ajay, there focusing on the glass being half full rather than half empty. What are your thoughts about this growing shift, although slightly modest, people would say, towards Trump from Indian Americans?
Mm-hmm. What I would say is that Indian Americans have always been historically focused on two things. We've come to this country as a land of opportunity, and so our nature is to be opportunistic. And so looking at sort of a dichotomy of the issues, we look at the social issues, whether or not our heritage, our culture, and others will be protected from racism and xenophobia versus the economy. And I think what we've seen is a significant shift where the Biden-Harris administration has been unable to manage the administration. And as Indian Americans, we know how very effectively to handle our money. And if we see an administration that doesn't know how to handle money the same way we do, then we begin to worry about that. And so I think the shift towards Trump is that we're looking at someone who knows how to manage the economy, who can, again, as Trump says, make America great again. What does that mean? Economic power and affordability, bring down interest rates, bring down inflation, and make it affordable across the board. We've also seen the end of affirmative action, which has unfairly discriminated against the Indian American community, which Trump supports. And I think that's really important to the future generation of Indian Americans and our students. And we see the significant involvement in government, in our family lives, and in our schools. And as proud Indian Americans, we care about our family, we care about our schools, and we care about our economy.
All right, we're also joined by Robert Shapiro. He's a political science professor at Columbia University. Welcome, Robert. Now, Robert, you've been listening in here. Now, one of the things that the survey also did was to ask respondents who they would support if November's presidential election was between two Indian origin candidates, hypothetically speaking, Nikki Haley on one side and Kamala Harris on the other. Now, 61% favored Harris, while only 20% favored Haley. What does that tell us about race? Race not being as important for Indian Americans as compared to what the party may stand for. What would your take be?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you on. And it was just pointed out, Indian Americans, in terms of the things that they would tend to vote on, are the same as other Americans, other minority groups, and the public as a whole. The thing that's been hurting Harris, and we see this in decline in support for Harris compared to Biden in the last election, is the performance of the perceived performance of the Biden administration. But the big party divide here, and this is something you haven't mentioned, the Carnegie survey reported that Indian Americans tend to lean to the left, and it looks like they lean to the left as much as or more than any other group in the United States, and that's pretty striking, and that may reflect the greater support for Democrats rather than Republicans, and you would see this by the head-on comparison between Nikki Haley and Kamala Harris.
But we're also hearing from that survey, Robert, some of which we asked our guests, Rick and Ajay, about, is the fact that that kind of lead or that love with towards Harris is somewhat weakening now, modestly. So where Trump is seen to be more in favor. So why do you think that's the case?
I tend to disagree with that.
I think
that's for Robert. Please, Robert, go ahead.
Oh no, I think what that's reflecting is that the election is really coming down to for many voters their assessment of the Biden-Harris administration, and that reflects the weakening of the support for Biden compared to 2020, and by inference here also Harris compared to Biden in 2020.
All right, just one quick question before we go here for Ajay, very quickly here. Let's look at how some of those people responded as far as the birthplace go. Now, amongst American Indian respondents born abroad, let's say India, both men and women, show high support for Harris, but the pattern really shifts when looking at US-born respondents. US-born women favor Harris hugely, but US-born men sharply support Trump. So why do you think that's happening?
So Kamala Harris, as I said earlier, has a personal connection to our community. As a daughter of Indian immigrant mother, her story reflects the struggles and aspiration of countless South Asians who have come to America and seek a better life. And that narrative, Harris has often shared.
Yeah, but why are young men not really supporting her anymore as much as they used to? Especially ones born in the US.
You know, there are so many polls out there, but on the ground situation, when we knock doors in Philadelphia, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Georgia, there's such a huge enthusiasm, and that enthusiasm can be seen at multi-level. That we have thousands of Indian American volunteers of all ages, from 60 plus to 30 plus to 20 young voters from 18 to age 18 to 30.
Okay.
They're all volunteering and knocking doors and making phones and calls. So what we are seeing in the ground reality is there's a huge enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. And I will add you on the economy. Right. We had one of the best economies where the stock market, if you look at the numbers, they're the highest. On the immigration issues, Kamala Harris and Biden have done so much for H1 visa stamping. Just one more minute. H1 visa stamping in US, which...
So Ajay, we've got to leave it there, running out of time.